Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC, and today we are going to discuss a fun little workflow inside of Spreadsheet Link for space planning and taking your room data, or let's call it room program data, and getting that into your Revit projects in a more efficient way. But before I get into that, I want to encourage everyone that is attending live today to ask questions using the questions panel. I will be monitoring those as best as I possibly can during the call, and will try to answer them in line as it makes sense. And we'll cover everything at the end if I'm not able to answer something. If you're watching the recorded version on our YouTube channel, which will be up shortly after this presentation is complete, please use the comments section there, and I will answer the questions, or one of us, likely me, will answer the questions for you then, because we monitor those as well. So with that said, let's get after it. Now, space planning in Revit, or space planning in general, is been around forever, and we're constantly building the bubble diagrams, and we get positioning things where it seems to fit. Revit has some pretty cool capabilities for doing that, but getting it to the point where you can actually utilize that takes some effort. And then there's the data entry aspect. You know, I need the room type and the name and the area or proposed area, for example, and maybe there's a number of rooms, and there's all this extra information that goes along with it. And right now, to get that into your Revit files, if you're not using an app like Spreadsheet Link, that's a lot of manual data entry. And oftentimes people don't go through this exercise, and they just start drawing walls and putting the design together and then making adjustments after the fact. And there's if you would like to do some type of bubble diagramming and kind of piecemealing things together to see how things will fit and how it will work, and to make sure you're meeting the client's requirements, creating these diagrams is a really great way to put things together. So today's discussion is going to show you how to do that and how to use Spreadsheet Link to get some of that data into your files to assist you in this process. So today we're going to talk about how to do that, how to get your data from an Excel spreadsheet into your families in your project, so that you can utilize those families to create these diagrams and to kind of define the layout. And show you how there's different ways to take that information out to do various comparisons, and kind of what that whole entire workflow would be, and how to save a template so that it can be used on future jobs. All right, so before we can do any of that though, there's some pre-work that happens inside of Revit in the form of building some content. Now, there are at minimum, two families that you need to make, or that you should make. First one is the planning block family, right? And that can be a mass family, and you can create a certain view type that shows masses all the time, or you could use a generic model. Either one works out just fine. I like using masses for this example, so that's what I'm doing. And then it helps to have a tag, so that as you're going along, you can start tagging these families and get an idea of what the name of it's supposed to be, what department it's associated with, what the actual square footage is versus what the desired square footage needs to be, and various other things that go along with it. So there's a lot that can go into this. And at minimum, some of the parameters that you'll need for this to function are listed here, but things like room name, because we're dealing with elements that are not rooms, right? So we need to include room name and department. Design area is one that we need to create. Area difference is another one, so I know how far off I am from the requested area versus the actual modeled area. Length, width, and height And again, that's just for your standard boxed shape. You can create multiple mass families if you'd like at various sizes. So if you, or shapes. So instead of just a box or a box with rounded corners, if you wanted to pretty it up a little bit more, maybe you want a T shape or an L shape or a stepped stair kind of shape, or you want to get really fancy and throw some extra curves in there in places. You can do all that. Whatever you think would be beneficial in putting these schematic plans together, do it. And then you can have material / color filly type parameters so that you can change the color of these elements, and which makes it then easier to see on the documents. And again, because we're not using rooms, can't do a color fill very easily. Perimeter, potentially, if it helps with any other bit of information. And room type, again, if needed, if that, in addition to department is required. And any other parameter that you may need based off the client's requirements. So, but and that might vary from project to project and client to client. You know, but at minimum, I think these first 9 or 10 should be there. And that's what I'm using in today's example, are these first 10 parameters. But after that, once you've got those families built, and you can have, again, one family for the block diagram and then a tag to go along with it. Once you have those done and you've got the families built, you can kind of hit the ground running. And that's, I guess I deleted my demo slide. For that matter, now we just kind of jump into it and hit the ground running. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my Revit file here, and not that one, because I want this one. All right, now, I forgot to save it. Let's do that real quick. Now, how this actually, that was the right file. How this will work is, and we're going to do this 2 different ways. One way, I'm just going to show you how it works. The second way, we are going to talk about how to get it to work. So what I've got here is my example today is I've got an existing building that's fully gutted out already, and I've linked the shell in. Now, it can be a live shell in the model. It can be start from scratch. I don't have an existing building, right? You can kind of put this together however you choose, right? It's not a single type of project workflow. I just chose this for today. I have my block family created. I've got one in here. I've got some others already pre-built as well. And I have my required parameters in place. And I've already taken the opportunity to place a bunch of them. And really all I did was I placed one. I used the array command and I arrayed out a bunch that I know I need at this moment in time. And the reason why I know that I need that many right now is I have the building program from the customer, and which sometimes may look like this, right? This is from an educational facility place, and they've got science labs and all kinds of other different room types and departments that they work with. So you may see programs that look like this, very well put together and well thought out, with all the rooms they need, what departments they go in. If there's occupancies that go along with it, sometimes you get those, various program square footages and all kinds of good stuff, right? So this one was well put together, a lot going on. Or, they can be as simple as my next example here, where it's just a list and you have departments and space name and just the basics. More often than not, it's probably going to look a little bit more like the first example I showed you. Now, this particular one that I'm showing you here is a modified version that I put together specifically for this example. And the reason why I did this, so I based it off of this one, but The reason why I can't use this directly is in some cases here, I've got multiple room types needed, or multiple rooms with the same name. And that I can't utilize that in my process because the names have to be unique. So I had to add an A1, an A2, and A3, even though these ultimately at the end of the day can all be the same. If this situation presents itself to be like that, you can add a room type parameter so that these are all kind of lumped into one, so that when you do your scheduling, you can group everything down by that type and make sure you're getting the quantities of that space in line, right? So it's just one extra parameter that you may need just to make sure you're not missing out on anything. So I've cleaned this up a little bit, but I've got my core pieces here. I've got department, I've got the space name or room name, I've got the proposed area here, or I guess the required area. I've got the quantity broken out just so that it's obvious. I'm not using quantity in any fashion for this example. And then I've got length, width, and height defined. The height was arbitrary. I kind of picked that, and that was just to help get my blocks to fill the space. But length and width is 100% based off the program area. And that's just to get me started, right? So I just took a square root and we called it good. So I built this out. Now what we do is I can utilize this in my workflow, and it'll work like this. Got my a starting point for my project. I've got my planning blocks in place. Come into Spreadsheet link, and when it's all said and done, you'll have a settings file that you can load. So I'm going to load my settings file, and we're going to utilize this one down here. I can load it up, and it's going to fire open my program that I have set up, and it's going to load up the mass category that I'm using. If you use generic model, that's okay. We just tweaked this a little bit to utilize the generic model category and parameters. Then from here, I'm getting a bunch of not applicable errors or messages in my spreadsheet. And the reason why is because I don't have a room name defined, but I do over here. So it's just a matter of copying this and pasting it. The second I paste it, all of my data populates. And now I know the departments for each room. I know what the required areas are, and I've got my formulas giving me the base for my planning blocks. And now I can apply this to my project. And I hit apply active worksheet, load it in, and you may be able to see this kind of pop off in the background here, but some of the blocks change sizes now. And it updated all 76 of them. Happens relatively quickly. I can close this without saving my settings. And now you can actually see the difference in the blocks themselves. And I can go ahead and get to work. And as a designer now, I would start taking the blocks and start just positioning them within the bounds of my project in this case. Again, if you're not using an existing building, you can just start piecing things together as needed. And that's where this example comes into play. So I've taken an extra step here, and I've utilized my color fill material to apply colors based on department. So I've applied these to certain blocks just so it looks a little bit nicer and neater and easier to tell what each one is doing without having to look at the tag every single time. I do have the tags in place, and as I'm going along and making adjustments and tweaking things, the tag's automatically going to update to show me actual area versus the designed area or the proposed area. So that way I can make sure that I am following the structure properly, or making sure I'm not deviating too far from what is deemed as a requirement. And I can go ahead and do that across the board and make myself very happy in my design work. Then the next step here is to start actually laying things out. So we've got it drawn. I've got a few things in place. And at this point, I can start drawing in the walls, and start boxing some things in to kind of determine where, start defining the layouts of everything, right? And I'll just shove this wall up a titch here, just to, not that, that's not the wall. That's the wall, there we go. We'll switch it to a smaller wall type just so it looks a little nicer there. And at this point though, I need to start inserting my room information on rooms themselves. But before I get too far ahead of myself with the layout, I need to make sure that I actually have stuff to place that lines up with this, right? So part 2 to this is making sure that I get my room data, the data that I've already incorporated from the spreadsheet that's already in my model, to also populate the rooms that I will ultimately end up placing in all these different areas, which then means I end up removing my mass block at the end of the day. So a quick way to go ahead and do that is back in Spreadsheet Link is to extract the mass data and apply it to the rooms. And there's there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing this. I'm going to do it the very simple way, and that's to grab the mass category and grab the 2 parameters that I care about at the moment, which is room name and department. And then I'm going to go ahead and build my rooms. And actually, I need to confirm one thing before I get too far ahead of myself. I need to have a room placed first. And I don't remember if I actually did that or not. I did. Look at me. Okay. So now I can go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go back to this plan. Oops. And in Spreadsheet Link, now I can go ahead and create as many additional rooms as I need to and port over the spatial data from my masses. So I'm going to grab mass again. We'll grab room name. We'll grab department. They're all populated here. If you want, grab design area. If you've got a parameter called design area attached to your room category, this will work. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not going to add that. But then I can grab the room category, add that here as well, and it's just going to generate a new tab down here at the bottom. It's already got a row in place. And I'm going to go ahead and add the 2 parameters that I care about, name and department. And before I do anything else, I need to tell Revit I need a bunch of different rooms. So I'm going to hit create here in my preview window and select create new rooms. This is going to allow me to create as many rooms as I need to. So I've already got the 1. I need 75 more. Pick the phase to put them on, and I'm going to hit create, and Revit's going to do all the fun stuff for me. And now there's 2 different ways we can go about doing this now. One is I can build a quick little lookup formula to grab the data from these columns here, or I can do it the nice and easy way and just select everything and copy and paste it. And now I get my room name and my department. And now I can go ahead and hit apply. And it's going to take those values, create the rooms in my Revit model, and I'm now getting name and department filled out accordingly, and that's already done. Now it's not placing the rooms. That's my job. And you could save these settings again if you need to, so you're not reinventing the wheel every single time. But now I get to go ahead and place those rooms. So in this case, they're already in my project. So instead of creating a new room, which is there by default, I can go ahead and specify the one I need, which would be faculty office 01 business. There it is. I can click the place. If my rooms are enclosed properly, it's going to work. This is not a room bounding link, so I need to do that. So no more warning. And then technically, I can delete the mass because now the data is in the room. You don't have to delete the mass, right? They're technically objects that by default are turned off. So at this point, I could switch to my working plan or my general floor plans and just start tagging and placing my rooms this way. So there's a couple of different, obviously there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing this. So now that I've shown you that process, we're gonna start over and I'm gonna walk you through it and show you how I did that. Now, because someone asked the question, where did you load the mass from? I loaded that mass. So first I built the family. I made it, right? So I did file new family. I'm not going to actually build the family. I'm just going to show you how I did it. File new family, English Imperial, and then I used the, where did it go? Conceptual mass template. I started from here. I did my extrusion. I did my parameters, saved the family called planning block. And then I used the insert command and loaded the family in. And that's how I got it into my project. I then took the array command here and I arrayed that across as many times as I knew I needed it. I did it all in one line. If that's kind of cumbersome and a little overwhelming, break it up. Do 25 in a row, for example. So 25 here, do it again for another 25, do it again for another 25. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get them placed, whether you use the array or manually copy them around, as long as they are placed. If you do use the array command to place them, make sure you ungroup them first, because otherwise they're all going to end up being the exact same thing, and that's not what we want. All of these files are available upon request if you want them. I guess I should have added that at the beginning, but yes, if you want the files data set, you can have them. So now we're going to set this up. So I'm going to switch back over to my Excel file here real quick, and just want to talk this through a little bit. So the important piece in the Excel file that we're calling up is that we have the information that we want to bring into Revit. Now, what I could have done to make this maybe potentially a little bit more intuitive is I could have used a bunch of lookup parameters or index and match or a VLOOKUP of sorts to extract this information directly out of the room program that I received from the client. That's one way to do it, right? And that way you're doing less copying and pasting or less editing and removing of data, right? We can extract it out of their file and bring it into our own cleaner file. And that way you're only worrying about the data that is important to this workflow. So in my case, I just built out my new columns and I copy pasted some data across. I inserted new cells to create additional spaces if the quantity of that space was more than one. Again, the names have to be unique to make sure we get the appropriate number of elements, because there may be, lumped quantities of these spaces. Now, I don't think I actually have them in this particular file, and of course, I've closed the one where I did. You can also build a template of this. So this is kind of a version of the previous file that I showed where you have a template and you can build out your formulas to do the lookups from specific files if you choose. I did not do that for this, but you can. Don't save that. Now, so this is my file. This is the one I stitched together for this process specifically. I can save. I've saved it. Now back in Revit, I want to start putting together this process to bring this information into my project. So I'm going to pull up Spreadsheet link. And now we're going to walk you through how to build the settings file that did all of that for me, that you can then share with your user base. So the first thing I did is I once I've launched a spreadsheet link is I come to the preview window and I open that spreadsheet that I built, which is this one, my sample program here. I'm gonna hit open. And it has the data in it already. It just opens it like it would in Excel. Then, without doing anything else, I come back over to my primary spreadsheet link window, and I'm gonna add the mass category as my primary family type. This is where you would choose generic model if that's the family you were using for your example or for your workflow. Now, at this point, I'm going to select the parameters that are important to the workflow that I need to extract data from. So in my case, we are going to go ahead and grab room name and department. Department, there we go. And then, order doesn't necessarily matter. It's really entirely up to you how you put it together, because the formula that we're going to use takes care of everything for me. So I can grab width and length and height and design area. And then last but not least, area. And that's just a visual piece. You don't have to add area because we're not actually pulling anything based on it. But if you wanted to, you certainly could. Again, I mean, because I'm not doing anything with it, I'll actually just take it out of the list. I don't want to over confuse anyone. Now, in my spreadsheet over here, I'm actually getting data already, and that is because we had everything placed to start with. I needed something to link up for the name and department, which will then control the sizes of everything after the fact. But for formulas to work, I can't have all these unit symbols. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit the hide unit symbol box here, which is just going to give me the raw numbers. That's step one at this point. Step two, before I get too far down the line, is to tell Spreadsheet Link which columns here are going to have a calculated value within. So what we're doing here is I'm going to put formulas into each of these last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells that will look towards the program tab to get their information. So those are the 5 parameters that need to have the calculated checkbox checked. Room name ultimately is defined by me via the copy paste. So the other 5 need to be calculated values. Now, this is the fun part, is doing the formulas. Now, this is a true spreadsheet window. If you've seen any of our other spreadsheet link presentations in the past, you'd know we've demoed that before. So there's a specific formula that I'm using today called index and match. I don't know if many of you are familiar with this particular formula. So I'm going to try to explain it as best I possibly can. So the index and match formula is designed to look at data from either an Excel workbook or worksheet or tab within the same workbook and match information together, right? So what this particular formula here is saying is look at the program tab, and specifically in this case in column A, and then match the values from column B for column C. And that's really what it's going to do here is match the room name property and then give me the value to stick here. And based on that, so I'll show you how this works. So I've got this one placed. I'm going to hit enter. And because I had this box set as a calculated value, that automatically applies to every single instance all the way down the line. If I had more placed, it would have kept going. If I had fewer placed, it would have stopped right at the end of my list. And all I need to do now to prove that this is going to work is grab a room name from the program tab. So I'm going to grab this first one here at the top. I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. And, oh, you know what? I forgot to change something. Why did that change? Oh my gosh, now I got all screwed up. Hold on a sec. I fat fingered something. And there it goes. I don't know what I touched. Clearly I touched something incorrect, but I don't know what that was. But so at this point, it's looking at the space name. So from column B, it's matching up space name here with space name here. And then it's going to go ahead and give me the department value in the cell that had the formula placed in it. Now, if I continue to go ahead and insert additional space names here or room names, I'm going to get the department populated for all of those. So before I do that, I want to do the formulas for the rest of these and make sure that the data populates accordingly. And so I've got a little cheat sheet over here that will be part of our little set. Oops, not that way. And all I need to change in this is what we're looking up. So in this case, I'm no longer needing department, I need width. Department was column A, width is column E. So now instead of program searching through column A, we're going to change this to column E. Hit enter, it applies all the way down and gives me that width, and that matches up, 35.496. Do the same thing here, right? And it's the same formula, we're just changing those two letters. So now we're looking for length. Length is in the F column, so that's what I'm going to put here. Oops, I know what I did. I was trying, there we go. Paste it and do F, enter, I get my number. Height, same deal. Height is column G, and it's, hey, look at that, makes it easy. I matched them up this time, apparently. G, enter. Design area is the last one, and that one is column C. So I'm going to paste my formula here, set these to both column C, hit enter, and now I get the proposed area. Okay, so at this point, we're done. I've got it set up. So I'm actually going to go ahead and clear this value out now. I don't need it, not for the template. Okay, I've got what I need now. I've got my mass category set up. I've got the proper parameters that I want to use. I've got my program template, or for this particular project, linked up, and I've got everything set. Unit symbols are hidden. Cells are told to calculate. I can be done. Now I'm going to save this. So at this point, it's not just your stock save to file or save to project. We do an advanced save. And the reason why we want to do an advanced save is because we're actually incorporating an Excel file into this setup. And to get that to work properly, you want to do an advanced save. And because you get to actually specify what that template worksheet is. So here, I can specify a template and just go ahead and browse to where I've saved this particular spreadsheet, which is this one. I'm going to hit open, and that's all you got to do. Because I still need to do some input. If I didn't have to do any additional input, I'd have the opportunity to do some auto saving and auto importing of information. And you'll see that in various other workflows that we have on our website or on our YouTube channel. But in this case, I just have a template. I get to go ahead and specify everything. Now I'm going to go ahead and save my settings officially. And this one we'll call CTC demo. I'm going to hit save. Yes. Now, to make sure this works, we're going to try it. I'm just going to close this out to make sure we start with a clean slate. We're going to hit fire it back up again. And I am going to pull some things around just so we can see here. So I'm going to hit load from file. We're going to grab our settings that we just saved. It's going to load up our program file. It's going to populate the mask category. It's waiting now for some input. So this is where I put in all the space names from the program sheet. Paste it. All this starts to populate. So what I'm going to do now is drag this over here so we can watch this happen a little bit. I'm going to hit apply the active worksheet. And yes, I do. And now our blocks have resized themselves. And now we're done. That's the primary workflow there that I wanted to show you guys today. So now I've got my blocks. They're all here. And now I can go ahead and start having some fun with colors and naming and design. So first thing I want to do is just utilize my tag that I built. I'm just going to do a quick tag all and put my planning tag in. Just do a quick tag all. They're all here, and it's showing me the name, the department, square footages, and then I can go ahead and start assigning colors based off department. So I think I've got a few extra biology rooms here. It stops there. I'm going to grab all of these and specify a material to give it, right? I should have at least one in here. I do. Go ahead and select it, hit OK. They all get it now. And if my coloring schemes are set properly, which it appears that there. No, that. Then I would have green, but I don't know why. I had this problem earlier and I don't know why it did. I forgot to link the parameters up. That's why. I forgot about that. Rookie mistake. And that's what I get for not saving my families and reloading them back in. So I have to go ahead and associate the color fill parameter. And that's my mistake. That's right. So there we have it. And now I get to the joyous process of moving these guys around and starting to place them and position them accordingly in the building. And I can go ahead and press and drag and get things realigned, put them in the positions that I need them to be, grab the next one, bring them in. And, depending on the building and the size and the shape and number of levels, you can start to determine where certain things are going to go, right? I put everything on level 1. You don't have to put in everything on level 1. I can insert some of these other ones, like if I know I needed however many on level 1, I need so many on level 2, and maybe you don't know and it's kind of an arbitrary number, but you can go ahead and make sure that those are placed accordingly. And when you run through your process, it doesn't matter what level they're on, as long as they're in the model, we can still accommodate that stuff accordingly. So you can kind of pretty much do any type of project that you need, and you can start to position these however you want. You can have science wing or a biology wing versus chemistry wing, and then go to the second floor and have an admin center and a food court area and whatever. Have fun. And again, you don't have to have the linked file. it can just be Revit. And because everything is here, you can just go ahead and freely start putting things together. If the more detail you put into the blocks themselves, the families themselves, the better they're going to look at the end of the day, right? Like I've built in enough to have a gap so I have room for an actual wall so that the square footages here are actually just the occupiable space. You can add additional graphics to these. So in some cases, you know, it's just a simple L shape with, again, no extra detail in it. Or, you know, you can get fancier. And oops, it didn't switch that one. And you can have dashed lines that represent the wall face or the wall edge, or in some cases the wall center line, and that way you've got something to align to, right? Some of these families have extra overlapping elements here so that you can snap to things. There's invisible lines drawn in certain places that represents the center of the wall. You can put in as much extra effort into this as you possibly want. And some, I think in this one I actually have I took it to the next level and I put in rounded corners. But there's where's the checkbox? There it is. Radius to corners. So you can do fun stuff like that so that it's more of a bubble diagram instead of just a block diagram, and make it look a little bit more presentable. And then if you want, change the radius so that it's not as drastic as mine are. But have fun with it at this point. You now have the ability to kind of bring it back to the days when we actually did this in sketches or by hand. Really, you can do it in Revit now, and hopefully the spreadsheet link process helps you get to that point a little bit quicker. And the data set that is available to you, if you want it, will help you get to that point. So that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope some of that was useful. So I appreciate you guys all coming today. If you do want your access to the data set that I showed you today, please email us and I will send it to you. info@ctcsoftware.com, and just mention that you watched this webinar today and that you would like a copy of the data set, and I will make sure you get a copy. And again, thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.